In this video, I'm going to talk about the buffer operator with RxJava on Android. So the buffer operator could potentially have a lot of use cases on Android. You know, the most obvious of which is buffering emitted objects to emit in groups, basically. And if you take a look at the diagram here, you see that. So these would be like the objects emitted by the observables. What the buffer does is it collects them together, and then you can say, you know, I only want to emit something when I have 3 of those objects ready to go, and then it would kind of emit them in a bundle sort of thing. And that's what the definition says here. It says periodically gather items from an observable into bundles and then emit the bundles rather than emitting items one at a time. So if we come down to the example that I wanted to look at here, the first one is very simple. I'm going to go through 2 examples. One is a simple example, and the second one is going to be tracking UI interactions using the buffer operator. So I'm going to click on, actually, I'm just going to scroll down to the simple example and take a look here. I'm going to copy all of this code that's inside the simple example, going to Android Studio, and I'm going to paste that in. Now I'm going to talk about what's happening here. So the observable that I'm creating, this shouldn't be anything new to you. I've gone through this in tons of different lectures. I'm using the from iterable operator and using that data source class, that static data source class, or the data source class with that static method, create tasks list, which creates a list of tasks, and it creates an observable out of that. And then I can apply the buffer operator, and I'm saying only emit these objects when there's 2 ready to go. So it's going to emit them in groups of 2, basically. If you take a look at the lecture on my blog, that's what you see in the log output. You see that that's the first emission, which would be this would be the second emission, and the third emission is only 1 because there's an odd number of tasks. So I'll just run this and I'll quickly show you the log output. So while this is getting ready to load here, because I'm just starting the emulator for the first time, I just wanted to talk about another potentially good use case for the buffer operator. It would also be good for if you were to do, you know, some kind of a network request, say, and you wanted to make sure you had a certain amount of objects ready to go before actually passing it to the UI. So using a buffer there would be cool because you could essentially say, okay, don't do anything until you have 3 ready to go that I'm going to send to the UI, something like that. So there's the app running, and you can see there's the first emission up to this. So there's the first emission, there's the second emission, and then the third emission right there. And you can tell because the log here, every time an emission is printed, the onNext method will be called, and this log will be first. So you see kind of this dotted line, which is what you see 3 times here. So there's 3 total emissions. So that's a very simple example. Now I'm going to take a look at kind of a more complex example so you can see kind of things from a different point of view. So now in this example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another library called the RxBinding library. It's actually made by Jake Wharton. If you don't know who Jake Wharton is, he's kind of like a famous Android guy. He works at Google now. He used to work at Square Up for the company Square Up. Anyway, not important, kind of off topic. But he made this library, and what it does is it makes it easy to detect clicks to buttons. That's not a good way to put it. Basically, you can make UI interactions observable, and it makes it easy to detect and track those observable interactions and convert them into Rx things, Rx observables, I guess. So you'll see in this example what I'm talking about, but basically what I'm going to do is apply his library to a button, and then I can observe clicks to that button and easily kind of apply operators, Rx operators to those button clicks. It's pretty cool, pretty useful library, so I definitely recommend checking that out, but you're going to see an example of it in just a second here. So coming down to the example, first is obviously you need to get this dependency. So add that dependency, add the version to your build.gradle file. I've already got that in there, so I'm not going to add that. And let's go down here. So this is all the code that you need to add to the activity. First, you need the composite disposables, because I haven't been adding that in all of my lectures, but in general, you always want to have a list of composite disposables that you can use in your Rx interactions, because you need to dispose of those observables when the activity is destroyed so that they don't stick around in memory, get memory leaks. So I'm adding that even though I haven't been doing it in the other lectures, just to kind of show you the proper way to do it. There's not a button in my UI, so I need to add that. So just kind of ignore that. And now I'm going to copy the onDestroy method. And inside the onDestroy method is where you want to clear those disposables. So I don't have this button in the UI, so I have to go and add that. So I'm going to go into activity main here. I think I have like a recycler view in there or something from some previous testing that I was doing. Yeah, I got all kinds of stuff. The layout files always make my Android Studio lag like crazy. I don't know why. I need to solve that problem someday. So I'm uncommenting this button. So the only thing in this layout right now is this button. It has some text that says button, and it has an ID that also says button. So nothing special here, just kind of a plain old button in the UI. And you can see that warning goes away. So now we're ready to use Jake Wharton's library. And how do we use it? Well, we call some static methods based on what kind of thing we're clicking on the UI. So in this case, we're clicking a view. A button is a view, is a subclass of the view class. So I'm using RxView, which is it's a class with some static methods. I'm calling the clicks method. So that's basically like saying, it's like attaching an on-click listener to a widget. I'm saying, I want to use this RxViews class. I want to detect clicks, and this is what I want to detect clicks to, which I'm referencing the button that's on my UI. So basically I'm saying detect clicks to this button, and it will, it returns an RxView object. Or what does it know? It should return an observable object. Yeah, so it returns an observable object so that we can then make use of the click basically. And then you can see the next thing I do is I use the map operator, which you should be familiar with. I have a lecture on that on my website. There should be a map operator lecture right there. So if you're not familiar with that, check that out. And then I'm applying a new function to that click. So I'm saying when this button is clicked, here's what I want you to do. I want you to apply this function. So I'm taking the unit object, which is the object that's outputted by this click method. It's an observable of type unit, not important. We don't need to use it. What I'm doing is I'm saying return 1. So every time there is a click, return 1. That gives me a way to keep track of how many clicks are happening. So then I can apply a buffer operator and specify a time unit. So I'm saying detect the clicks. Every time there's a click, return 1. And I want to collect all of those clicks for 4 seconds. So during a time span of 4 seconds, this is going to continue returning 1 every time there's a click. And then it's going to emit the sum of everything that was clicked. So the sum of these integers basically. So the first click there'd be 1, second click would be 2, 3. They would continue to sum until the 4 seconds is up. When the 4 seconds is up, the onNext method would trigger. And when the onNext method triggers, we get a little log output saying which integers were collected during that time. So like I said, this is going to continue to output an integer every time it's clicked, and then the onNext method will give me a list of all those integers. The integers are just going to be 1. So basically what this is going to print out is it's going to print out like a comma separated list. I'll just do a comment here to show you what it would look like. It would be a comma separated list that would look like this. So if I click the button 6 times, that's the list that would be given to the onNext method. And then I can use the size of that list. So if its size is 6, that means I clicked it 6 times in 4 seconds. So we would get an output that says that I clicked it 6 times in 4 seconds. So let's run it and see how many times I can click the button in 4 seconds. All right, so let's bring up the log here. And the observable should start running right away. So we should see, some log output saying 0 times in 4 seconds, 0 times in 4 seconds, because I'm not clicking it. But now I'm going to start clicking it and see what I can get. So let's see, the first one should be printing pretty soon. Yeah, so there was 6 seconds in 4 seconds, 16 times in 4 seconds. I'll actually filter this so we can see it a little better. And then it's back to 0 again. Now I'm going to click it as fast as I can. I think the fastest I ever got was like 30 something. Yeah, there's 26. So you get the idea. It's a way to track clicks. I can use the buffer to buffer a time limit. But there's lots of different things you can do with the buffer operator. Basically, it's just a way to kind of restrict emissions to a certain amount. In this case, it's integers. In the previous example, it was number of tasks. But you can get pretty creative with this and do a lot of different things with it. So that's it for this video. I hope that that was helpful to you and you now know a little bit more about the buffer operator. Next, we're going to look at the debounce operator, which is a very useful one. You're definitely going to want to watch that video, so I suggest checking that one out.